This happened yesterday. Kind of caught us all off guard. We had to do some extra reading today for this topic. The Academy Awards have drastically overhauled their eligibility requirements for Best Picture. This is going to commence in 2024, and I believe that's going to be the 96th Academy Awards at the time. So there's a few more years before this does take effect, and who the hell knows what the Oscars are going to look like in February. Who knows? But essentially what this is, and I'm going to try to break this down as coherently as possible, and I know you guys got a lot to say about it, so I'll throw it over to you shortly. But I've kind of distilled down, in order for a Best Picture nominee to be eligible, it will need to meet 2 of the 4 standards that the Academy has released, in so to speak, in a big long press conference. I've kind of broken them down. There's 4 of them. They need to meet 2 of these standards. At least one of the leads or supporting actors must be from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. At least 2 creative leadership positions, so such as director, producer, cinematographer, what have you, and department heads must be from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups. Paid apprenticeships and internship opportunities that are inclusive to those same underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. That needs to be a thing on part of the studios, that they are offering opportunities of advancement for people of color. And then studios must have multiple in-house senior executives from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups. That's a mouthful. I didn't want to use the UREG acronym there, but there you have it. Those are the 4 kind of distilled. There's a big, I think, 4 or 5 page thing from the Academy you could read, but it's pretty explanatory. And obviously the internet's pissed off about this, because why wouldn't they be? But I want to know what we think of it. I'm just gonna I'll set my tone right here and just say that, you know, sometimes you have to force change in some particular way. And I think that if you've watched the Oscars year after year with any regularity, like I have, there's often a type of movie that gets nominated for the Oscars. I mean, the term Oscar bait is a thing for a reason, too. And you look at some of these movies, and a lot of them are good. A lot of the movies that do get nominated for the Oscars are good. But there's still so many other movies that are like independent movies or don't get much recognition that you're like, this could speak to a lot of people, but nobody knows about it. And I think that's the other thing at play over here, is getting these movies a wider audience so that they can be seen and these other voices and backgrounds can be heard. Dominic, I know you. I know your personality. I know you have a lot to say. What say you about the Academy Awards change in eligibility requirements?
Racism is solved. We did it, guys. Great work. I think it's important to contextualize that the Oscars themselves are towards the end of the movie industry pipeline. So even beyond the Oscars, you've got like DVD release and then remastering, like with Godfather 3 and stuff. So in a single movie's pipeline, Oscars is it's on the latter half. And you know, it's official recognition for things that have already been made and circulated, and only a small piece of elevating representation in the Hollywood mainstream. So other pieces are, include like inclusive casting, beyond stereotypes, highlighting writers of color, inclusion writers. That's an important part of contracts, I think have been for a while, but particularly now, bringing women directors further into the fold, etc. So it's just important to contextualize that the Oscars are kind of the end point, or part of the end point. So there's a lot more in that process before racism can be solved in this particular issue. But really, I haven't done the hard math, but it looks like the requirements the Oscars are attempting to standardize and codify. They're just trying to standardize what's already been the trend for a while now. And the Oscars is kind of just playing catch up after, 2017's, hashtag Oscars so white, Oscars so male. Even since then, particularly with La La Land and the Moonlight, kind of the dichotomy of those two things. But it's interesting. I don't place too much hope on things like hope's probably a weird word to choose. So much on mandatory minimums, and you really get into the weeds and the numbers of it. I'm more of just trying to culturally transform that altogether. But as Steve said, at the end of the day, if it's just not getting there, and if you do want to hit a deadline, sometimes you do need that, right? So, in fact, looking at the requirements here, and I think, well, actually, I should also say that the most contentious one is probably going to be on standard A, which is the on-screen representation, and that is the one that's going to be the hottest. I can tell you right now, is at least one of the lead actors or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. That's going to be the hottest one. That's the one the internet is going to explode about.
Because the other ones are behind the scenes. Yeah,
exactly. The other ones are behind the scenes and are actually quite easier. I say that as, someone who's not a person of color in the industry. So maybe it's not as easy, but it is technically easier because, like, even standard B, which is a little higher up, at least 2 of the following creative positions. There are so many positions here: casting director, cinematographer, composer, costume designer, and that's like a third of the list. So as long as you get 2 in there, you've pretty much met that standard. And I'm not part of Hollywood, but I would think that Hollywood has already been trending there, and that's probably already something that has been. It's just codifying something that has already been a rising trend. But that first part, lead actor or significant supporting actor. So that's where it gets tricky already. That's already kind of vague. Significant supporting actor. Okay, interesting word choice there. So then I actually looked at 2019's Best Picture list. And you guys tell me too, how many of these movies for the Best Picture list would make these new standards? So Parasite obviously would make it because the whole cast is Korean. Ford versus Ferrari, I didn't see that. Would that make it?
No, everybody was white in that movie.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Well, the one thing I will say though is if it must meet 2 of the 4 standards to be eligible, though.
Okay.
I'm not going to pretend that I know the makeup of certain studios and their department heads or whatnot. You know what I mean? Because The Irishman and Marriage Story I saw brought up, though, because Netflix has a pretty diverse marketing team to begin with, from what I've understand and looked into. And also, too, there's 2 female department heads over at Netflix as well. So those bases could be tagged. Behind the scenes. Right. That's where it gets tricky, is because it's I don't think you nor I have the 20th Century Fox directory on hand. And stuff like that.
Not on me right now.
And the paid apprenticeships and the internship opportunities, you wouldn't know unless you were seeking a career in film. So honestly, that's for Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. And if you scroll, I was going to make a point, Steve. Let me make no. If you scroll down past the first A1 part that everyone's going to freaking explode about, I can tell you right now, the paid apprenticeship part, I'm like, okay, yes, 100%. That's A+ good work on that.
Is.
Because that's, dude, it's internships and apprenticeships. Yes, that is actually where that needs to start. That's where it needs to be. And that is just something that not even Oscars, but on the other end of the pipeline, that's just where it needs to be encouraged. And that is what the Oscars is trying to do. So I do appreciate that. It's also another thing, kind of zooming out, is that this, if I'm reading this correctly, this is only the Best Picture category, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Best Picture, while the crown jewel of the Oscars, there's a crap ton of other categories that, to my knowledge, do not have these requirements. So again, just kind of contextualizing that this isn't as hard of a crackdown, by the Hollywood elite on your precious white fragility than you probably think it is. But even then, it's interesting. And then reading into the initial thoughts on it, Well, okay. Before we get into counter arguments, I think I'll toss it to Joe before we get into that. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, for me, this whole idea, I think it's great for getting more diversity behind the scenes and everything. We saw how that worked out for a film like Black Panther, which was a very large, diverse cast and crew. And look what they turned out. They had amazing costume design, some great cinematography, stuff like that. However, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm hoping this doesn't mean that, you have a lot of studios just, going for the easy Oscar bait thing, and we keep getting just the next what is that movie about
The Help?
Not The Help. Well, that's a good example, but the NASA movie with the three
Hidden
women.
Figures.
Hidden Figures,
yeah.
I'm hoping we don't get just like, okay, real quick, we need our leading like minority cast and done by a minority director, and you just get like another Hidden Figures, and it's just cookie cutter film. I'm hoping like this does lead to, one, just great films in general, but two, yeah, getting more diversity within Hollywood, cast, crew, whatever it may be. I'm hoping it leads to, great stories, great films like Get Out or Parasite, which, definitely have these categories that, like, they can at least meet two of them. I'm hoping we get films like that, not like Hidden Figures, not like The Help, where it's just, like, easy Oscar bait, like, like basically low-hanging fruit for this whole category. And I will say this too, I'm looking at these comments down in the comments section, and it's funny. Every year people are like, who gives a damn about the Oscars? But the minute they make the slightest change, the Oscars get the most attention ever.
Yep, total. I love that hypocrisy when everybody's like, "Who gives a damn about the Hollywood elites and stuff?" But then they do something like this, and it's an uproar.
Yeah, how dare you do this to my Oscars that I always say I'm not going to watch this year?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
that's the
I
same
think-
argument with football starting up. It's I'm not going to watch the NFL. If you're not going to watch the NFL because players are protesting, you were never a fan to begin with. Sorry.
That's very true. As if I even have the time to watch the opening ceremonies or whatever. I just wait till kickoff. But personally, anyway, because Chelsea's the bigger fan, not me. But in any case, even before I read that comment section, which was beautiful, I immediately knew like what everyone's counter argument was going to be, which was that, well, the only thing that matters is the quality of the film. Well, okay, that's kind of narrow-minded. May I even say ignorant? But saying like the only thing that matters is the quality of the film when it comes to movies is like saying the only thing that matters to the severity of is the severity of the crime when it comes to criminal justice, right? On paper, there has never been an Academy rule that says gay people can't be Oscar winners. But the Oscars have been around since 1928. So good luck being a gay person at all back in the 30s or 90s for that matter. So that's why the Oscars is trying to encourage these things. And even beyond the Oscars, just Hollywood in general is trying to culturally uplift that. I actually looked up some Oscars history here. Hattie McDaniel was the first African-American to win an Oscar way back in 1940. She was the first nominated and the first to win and the first woman. Except she won it for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. The safest possible choice, the most stereotypical. Granted, this was the 40s. But I don't know. The next time an African American would win any of the four acting categories, both male, female, and primary and supporting, would be all the way in 1963 by Sidney Poitier for Lilies of the Fields. Also, Halle Berry is still the only woman of color to win Best Actress. Think about that. The only woman of color to ever win Best Actress. And it was for Monsters Ball back in 2001. So she had to show some skin to get that. No, I'm kidding. I haven't seen that in a while. But I mean, she actually, there were like some pretty, if I remember, there were some like really graphic sex.
That's her best role, probably.
I need to watch it again.
I'm hoping now with like having to have on-screen representation and everything, like she won't be the only one when we at least get to the 100th Oscars. Can you imagine? It's like 100 Oscars, and Halle Berry is the only leading actress of color to ever win something.
That's mind blowing. And as you mentioned earlier, with the stereotypical like Hidden Figures movie or The Help, Viola Davis couldn't even win Best Actress for playing a Gone with the not essentially because it's a different setting, but it's kind of the same character as Hattie McDaniel's Mammy from Gone with the Wind, more or less, right?
I thought she should have won for Fences, and she didn't get that.
I agree. I agree on that. We're not going to get into that one, but no, it's true. I mean, Lupita Nyong'o too.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Didn't Jennifer Lawrence win over her, or was that the Golden Globes?
It might have been the Globes.
Oh, it was the Globes. It was the Globes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
but that's a wild stat. That's a wild stat.
And by the way, Viola Davis hates her role in The Help now. She if you read anything about her and The Help, she freaking despises.
Yeah.
She looks down on that.
She's denounced that movie time and time again.
Yeah, for sure. So this is it's jarring to think that, you know, it's kind of like forced diversity in kind of a way if you frame it like that. But if you look at the context of the history of the Oscars, even go beyond the Oscars, because this is it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's the end point of the movie cycle, and it's just the awards. You know, you got to think back to like indie movies. Think back to the stuff behind the scenes, which the Oscars is trying to do kind of with those stats, with those requirements, I should say. But if you look at that, there is an argument to be made. Now, personally, I'm actually kind of ambivalent about the actual getting into the weeds about the policy in particular and the numbers and all that stuff. Like 2 out of 4, I don't know, man. That's kind of the easy way out. You can kind of fudge that or whatever. But I'm much more excited about the ongoing trend of inclusion in the production and casting stages that we have been seeing. And it is harder to measure and harder to kind of like, I guess, not legislate, but it's kind of a harder thing to standardize without legislation. That's something beyond what the Oscars can do. But it does bring us closer, I think, to the Oscar nominees we want and need, probably better than what just talking about it might do. So time will tell. I'm sure there's going to be some drama flaring up, particularly with that very first A1 standard. I'm sure a lot of people are going to misread it and like misinterpret it completely. So it is an easier step. Oh yeah, 100%. I don't know.
You stole that point right off my notes, Dom. How about how it's like it's working towards the nominees that we want to see and that we should be seeing more of, because America, and it's going to piss people off, but America is a very diverse country. It is. There's a lot of backgrounds. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of religions. There's a lot of ethnic backgrounds and stuff. And you don't get that recommendation. You don't get that view if you look at like the art. Like when it comes to our institutions, like that acclaim movies and you know what I mean, say what's good and bad art. You know, because somebody's got to be the judge. I'm not saying the Oscars are the end all be all. But someone's got to be a judge. Some people have to be the judge. And there's a reason that, like, this is also in part damage control, too.
Oh, 100%.
To, like, the Oscar So White campaign.
Can I just say, too?
Real quick. Yeah, go ahead.
Like, because I've been seeing people being like, because they brought up the 2019 thing with you that you pointed out, Dom, about Best Pictures. They're like, well, what about the movies like 1917 and Ford versus Ferrari and The Irishman? Like, now we don't get to see movies like that? It's like, no. Like, those films are still going to be made. No one's, like, stopping those films from ever being made. Sam Mendes made that film because he had that vision. He didn't make it because he wanted to win an Oscar. Scorsese just makes mobster films. So, you know what? Like, he's never going to get a Best Picture nomination, I think, ever again because, you know, it's always Italian white people in his movies. But whatever. I don't think he's going to care because he loves telling those stories. And the Ford vs. Ferrari, I mean, like, you know, again, that's a historical point. God, I forgot who made that film. Crap. But, like, that director, I mean, like, he bounces around from so much Johnny Cash, Logan, and, like, all these other things.
James Mangold?
Yeah. James Mangold, yeah. Like, again, guy likes to tell really personal stories, especially, like, on, like, historical figures like Johnny Cash and the Ford creative team that, you know, when they entered in the Le Mans race and whatnot. Those movies are still going to be made. People are thinking, like, now this is going to change everything in Hollywood. All my Marvel movies are going to include diverse casts, which they are, by the way. Everything I want to see is going to be, like, full of diversity. They're going to change colors. And people's like, no, that's not what's happening. You're totally right. People are just looking at that A1 category. They don't even acknowledge anything else. Like, literally, a studio could just be like, all right, screw it. Do C and D. Like, and then just, like, you know, everything behind the scenes.
That's 100% what they're going to do.
And that's exactly what they're going to do.
Another kind of facet to not particularly these guidelines, but kind of just how the Academy works overall, which is a whole mess in and of itself, just in terms of the voting process, the membership, and all that. The Academy, since the Oscars So White mishap, had been trying to get more of its voter membership, to be more to diversify both racially and get more women involved. So you'll see a lot of stats about like, well, the Academy, doubled its membership of women, tripled its racial diversification. Except when you remember that just goes to show how white the original voter base was among the Oscars, because this is from an article from Digital Spy. Take that as you will. But, quote, another diverse membership drive was championed in 2018, but the current breakdown is still only a reported 31% female and 16% people of color. It's a 3% rise since 2017. But the Academy is hardly speeding towards proportional representation, unquote. So, yeah, still 16% people of color, and that's after they tried a big recruiting drive, get more people of color on board or whatever. And there's another stat where it was like, in 2014, the voter base of the Academies was whiter than the state of Utah, which I thought was freaking hilarious. That one was from the Atlantic.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing process. Personally, I think it's a wait and see kind of thing. It's not going to solve everything. And if anything, if you really read and see the requirements, the 2 out of 4 thing, the way that studios are probably going to, now more than ever, they're going to have that back pocket Hidden Figures movie ready to go. It's like, okay, we got the one with Viola Davis and I was gonna say Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, but Mahershala Ali.
Yeah,
we got that one there. It's like, okay, good. Now we can actually make the movies we want. That's probably what's gonna happen, and that always happens with these kinds of minimums. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it unfolds. And also 2024, right, Steve, is when these actually take place.
4 years from now. So there you go.